So this fall, I took a sabbatical from ministry, having been in ministry for nearly 28 years. Over the course of those 28 years, have taken some bumps and bruises and hits and wounds along the way. And one of the things I realized is I had lost my will to fight in many cases. And I described to my wife at one point and to the coach that I've been working with that I was a warrior who had lost his will to fight and had hung up his sword many years ago and was no longer in the battle to the degree that I needed to be. And so in my sabbatical journey, I really spent a lot of time praying and journaling and getting back in touch with the reasons why I got in the battle in the first place. What was it that caused me to jump into the fight, if you will, and take up the sword? And what was my cause? What was my passion? What was I willing to run to the battle for to begin with? And for me, that really came down to two things. My passion has always been the hearts of men, and my second passion has been those who don't have the opportunities that I've been given. And so in October, I began to really touch that piece of my heart again. I began to shed tears over that piece of my heart again. And so I told my wife in October, I said, there's only one thing I want for Christmas this year. I want a sword, a representation of the battle, something that I can look at every day and be reminded of who I am, a warrior at heart, somebody who's willing to pick up the sword not because he loves the battle, but because he loves the reason that he fights. He loves the people that he fights for. He loves the causes that he goes to battle for. And so last night, my family presented me with this sword. And my middle son, Colin, is a fan of books and movies, and he took it upon himself to choose the particular sword. And so there's a story behind this sword that I didn't know, and he told me the story. This story is the sword of King Theoden from Lord of the Rings. And the story of King Theoden in Lord of the Rings is King Theoden was poisoned by the words of a close associate who was using those words to cast a spell upon him that took away his will to fight and caused him to age. And it was only when the sorcerer Gandalf appeared and broke that spell that things began to change. And so there's a point in The Lord of the Rings where Gandalf encourages Theoden to once again grab hold of his sword so that his body will remind him of his strength and who he once was. And he will take up his cause again, and he will find within him a reason to fight and to lead his people. And so my son felt like this sword was the representation in my own life of the journey I've been on, finding my reason to fight once again. And, it's been a wonderful journey the last several months because God has reconnected me to those deeper purposes in my life. He's given me clear sight once again and helped me refine my mission statement and my values and gotten me in touch with the things that I am passionate about, the things that make it worth getting up in the morning and grabbing hold of the sword and entering the battle. Sometimes that battle is in the marketplace. Sometimes that battle is on my knees before God, crying out on behalf of people around me. Sometimes that battle is with pen and paper, writing a letter to somebody who's about to give up and lose hope. Sometimes that battle is a word of encouragement to somebody who just needs something. Sometimes it's a smile, it's a friendly word. That battle takes on many shapes day by day. But every day we've got the opportunity to pick up the sword and fight. But my family gave me something even more meaningful than this sword. Each of my children and my wife wrote me a letter that was handed to me with this sword. And each of them said to me what this sword represented to them and why this sword was a representation in their lives of who I am to them and who I have been to them. And then each of them encouraged me to continue picking up the sword and carrying on the fight and setting the example for others that I've set for them. And I tell you what, it was hard not to just cry a river last night. And so I just want to encourage you today. I don't know what your fight is. I don't know if you've stayed in the fight. I don't know if, like me, there have been times you've hung up your sword and quit fighting because you've taken too many hits. But I want to encourage you, pick up your sword. There are people who are depending upon you to get into the fight. Not because you love the fight, but because you love the people, the causes, the things that are worth defending. That's where the sword does its best work, defending those people and things and causes that are most important. Just a few thoughts for you today. I hope you find those helpful.